do that, I'm just curious, are any of you stressed? Yes? Right now, on a regular basis, anytime. Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, I'm actually incredibly stressed right now as well. I think it's ironic that I got into this business because my two biggest fears are public speaking, first, and second is flying. So I was doing pretty good with the public speaking thing until Lori told her story about flying. And now I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed about getting on a flight later on today. But this is a really important topic, and I always find it especially interesting to speak to women's groups about stress. It's, I'm sure, no surprise to you that women typically are natural caregivers. They typically put themselves last on the list of priorities. And it doesn't take statistics to know this, but there actually was a research study published recently by the American Cancer Society that said that 90% of women feel like they're unable to eat in a healthy way, and 85% of them don't get the minimum recommended exercise each week. So I believe a lot of that is because of the stress of taking care of everybody else, which happens a lot with women. So I find this particular audience to really need this topic and also embrace this topic. The biggest complaint that I get from clients is that they don't have enough time and they have too much stress. So we typically focus on those two elements. What can I do to get more time, and what can I do to have less stress? And I believe that the emphasis is being placed in the wrong spot. So unfortunately, I'm not here to take away your stress. Sorry about that. But I am here to give you some suggestions on how to manage stress and actually introduce the concept that stress is actually a very important part of being successful as long as we manage it in the right way. The more I study, the more I realize how important energy is. Energy is our most valuable resource. As I mentioned before, time is really important, but time without energy is void of value, really, and actually sometimes can be really negative. How many of you have been somewhere before where you've scheduled time to be there, but maybe your energy wasn't there? So mentally, maybe you were distracted or somewhere else, or emotionally, you were still connecting to something outside of the room. Have you all done that before? Okay, none of you are doing it right now, right? Just want to make sure. Okay, so that happens all the time. We can schedule our time to be somewhere, but without bringing our energy, we really get no return on that investment. Your time is precious. It is limited resource. So we want to make sure that in the time that you have, you can tap into that energy source. But it's the same concept of putting your oxygen mask on first in this case. Is we all know it. We all know we should be doing that. We all know we need to take care of ourselves. But in the day-to-day grind, when there's a million different priorities, we're usually the first thing to go off of that priority list. Stress is actually required for growth. Stress is a stimulus that causes some sort of change. So if it's in the physical body, we see this through strength training, for example. If you want to build a bigger muscle, you have to break down that muscle in order for it to repair and adapt and get stronger. Well, the same thing applies to anything else in life. If you want to be more patient, unfortunately, you have to stress your patience muscle. If you want to learn something new, you have to spend time and energy investing in developing those areas in your brain. So it takes some sort of stimulus to create that effect, which is why stress is actually positive. Without stress, by the way, there is no growth. And interestingly enough, one of the peaks in mortality occurs within 6 months of retiring. And the belief is that it's because for a lot of people, the mission that they've been working on for so long changes so drastically that their system can't tolerate it. So we have to have that continual development, that continual stress, as long as we're balancing it with recovery. That's the most important part. The stress is not necessarily something that we can control. The recovery absolutely is. So if you look at the human system, everything about us oscillates, by the way. If you look at heartbeats, if you look at brain waves, if you look at muscle patterns, everything goes like this, like what you see in that slide. What happens when we have this effect? Death, right? It's pretty dramatic. Okay, death. When we flatline, we cannot function there. But if you think about that from a stress recovery perspective, what do we typically do? Stress, 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 and then we can't figure out why we can't fall asleep at night. Because we try to drop it off all of a sudden. Vacation. How many days does it take you to actually go on vacation once you're on vacation, right? it's almost impossible to shut that switch off because we're going and going and going and going, and it's too drastic of a switch. What this demonstrates to me is the need for oscillation throughout the day. So it's stress and recovery within your day.